Hello guys, welcome back to Hobby Journals. Today is my January and February wrap up. So let's just get right into what I have been reading so far this year. The first book I do not have, I actually read on my Kindle, and that is The Grace Year. What is the author name? So the first book I read was The Grace Year by Kim Liggett. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that, but it is essentially a feminist dystopian. It is a young adult book, and it's definitely written like a young adult book in my opinion. It follows this girl who is going on her grace year, which is a year for girls when they hit a certain age. I think it's when they have their first period. They are sent off into the woods to dispel their magic. I think that that's all you really need to know going into it. It is a really interesting read. I got through it pretty fast. I did enjoy it, but I do think that some of those feminist messages didn't really fully work for me. Also found there to be some plot holes, and that there was a romance thrown in there that was didn't really make much sense to me. So yeah, I just had some issues with it, but I do think that it is definitely worth a try. It is on Kindle Unlimited, so yeah, that is The Grace Year. And then secondly, I got into my second TJ Klune book, and that is The Lives of Puppets. This was also a bit of a mixed bag for me. It was very slow to start. Well, I guess I'll tell you what it's about first. So all you really need to know is that it has sort of the vibes of the movie Robots if it were based in the forest and they live in tree houses. You're following our main character, who is a boy being raised by a robot father, and he also has two robot companions, a Rambo, who is essentially a Roomba, a talking Roomba vacuum with little hands. So that's really fun, and a nurse robot. Very, very interesting characters, very interesting vibes in here. It was really fun, but like I said, it was a bit slow to get into. I also was my other, I read this quite a while ago, so I'm trying to remember some of my concerns. Oh yeah, the sexual humor in this book was a little bit weird and off-putting, especially because our main character is asexual, and it's that's brought up a couple of times, but a lot of sexual jokes are kind of made at his expense. So I just found that kind of I don't know, kind of weird. But overall, also would recommend this one. Pretty fun time. Just the vibes and the atmosphere and the characters are definitely my favorite part, and it was quite funny when it wasn't relying too heavily on that uncomfortable sexual humor. So yeah, that is In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. And then we got into reading these massive beasts. So this is my first time reading the Crescent City series, and I waited for obviously this to be closer to coming out so I could kind of get through the whole series without having to jog my memory about any of the details. I don't really think that this series needs much explanation. We follow Bryce, our main character, who, spoiler alert, I kind of really don't love. She's definitely my least favorite of the Sarah J. Maas female main characters. It's a urban fantasy, so it is set in a modern world with cell phones and stuff, but there are also all sorts of different magical creatures and fae and werewolves and all kinds of stuff. So I would say it is a fun series, definitely my least favorite of her series. I'll just run through my ratings and my thoughts about each book real quick. So the first book, which is probably actually my favorite in the series, sort of just a murder mystery type deal, where Bryce is trying to uncover what happened to her best friend Danica and her pack, who all get murdered 50 pages in. It's not a spoiler, it literally says it in the description, so sorry, I'm not giving any spoilers. But yeah, I found this one to be really fun, and the romance between the two main characters is definitely at its best in this first book. I think, as you'll see, I don't, kind of gives me the ick for the rest of the books, but I enjoyed them in this, and I had pretty high hopes for the rest of the series after reading this one, and obviously that was not the greatest idea to have such high hopes, but so yeah, I gave this one a 3.5. Did still like find it to be pretty slow, and I just, yeah, so that's why I got 3.5. And then we get into my least favorite in the series. I gave this a 2-star. Spoiler. This book took me like, I think over 2 weeks to read, which is honestly crazy. And I wasn't reading anything else at the time either. Like, it really, like, this series honestly put me in a book slump. But sorry, I'm kind of like trashing on the series. I really don't mean to be, but yeah, this was just so slow. The ending was great. Love the ending, so that's why it like didn't get just a 1 star. Like a whole star it gets just for like how like cool that ending was. But yeah, there's just not that much else that's redeemable about this to me. This had some of like the cringiest smut I have ever read. Like I don't even want to think about it. Like, I don't read a lot of smut, so I mean that's not like saying much. Like, I'm sure that there's a lot worse out there, but it just like, yeah, this book really gave me the ick. So 2 stars for how, oh, I didn't even say. So this one is House of Earth and Blood. This is House of Sky and Breath. And then I got into House of Flame and Shadow, the newest release. And this one definitely wasn't as bad as the previous, but not as good as the first. I ended up giving this a 3 star. There's not much I can say about this without giving spoilers. I will say that I really liked like the tunnel atmosphere. I know like so many people hated that, but like for some reason it was really giving me Zelda like dungeon or Zelda shrine vibes. So I really liked that. I thought that this one was the fastest paced and like quickest to get through out of all of them, but I really hated our main character for most of this book, and yeah, I got a 3. It was okay. I had fun reading it, but definitely it had a lot of issues, which I'm sure a lot of people have talked about and you've heard about, so I'm just gonna move on. But that is my experience with the Crescent City series. Coffee break. And then I'm actually trying to remember, what did I move on to after that? And then we got into a book that put me even further into my slump. Again, another one on the Kindle, and that was Never Lie by Freida McFadden. And I did read this book in a day. I listened to quite a bit of it on audio, and I didn't hate it to start with. The writing was kind of just meh for me, but I feel like that way with most thrillers. I like the setup of the story. Basically, we are following a, God, I'm trying to even remember this book because it just, whoosh, just went out of my mind. God, what was this book about? Okay, so I'm reading the description that's coming back to me. So we are following Trisha and Ethan, who are a newlywed couple, and they're house searching, and their real estate agent does not show up when they show up for showing for a house, and they end up getting snowed in at this place, and then they realize that they are at Adrian Hale's house, who is like a renowned psychiatrist who actually like disappeared, and I don't think her murder was ever really solved. Essentially, that is the setup, is they are trapped in this house of this woman who disappeared. I just finished filming this entire video and realized that my mic cut off in the middle of me talking about Never Lie. So let's continue and kind of get as quickly as we can through the rest of these. Okay, so my problem with this, essentially, I did like get through it in a day. It was very fast paced, and I found the writing to be just kind of meh, like it is with most thrillers. But I got to the end and found that the twist made absolutely no sense. And yeah, that was really like my big issue, is that it like literally the pieces do not add up to like get to that ending, and I was like really waiting for like some really good big twist. So yeah, overall it was just really meh, and then that ending just didn't redeem anything for me. So 2 stars. If you think there's any other Freida McFadden books I would like though, please let me know down below. I got that recommendation from my aunt. She has read like a good chunk of her books, and that one is her favorite. So I'm just thinking if that's like the best she has to give, then she's probably just not for me. Not to be mean, but that book just wasn't it for me. And then we finally get into some stuff that I enjoyed reading. That was more than just a meh or a absolutely not. Because as you can see so far, the highest thing I have rated were 2 3.5s. So no 4 stars, no 5 stars yet. Until we get to We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. This is just such a... Okay, hi, sorry. New filming location a little bit later. My phone died, so here we are. Yeah, this follows, first of all, this cover is just absolutely beautiful. So this follows our main character, Mary Catherine, and her uncle and sister, who she lives in a mansion with. The rest of her family has died, and that kind of like unravels throughout the story. So the book has like a sort of like eerie atmosphere, but at the same time a lot of like nature-y elements, a lot of like descriptions of like the garden, obviously like mushrooms and like different plants and stuff, and how like when you're a kid, so like at one with nature, like playing outside, and how like kids can also be like kind of creepy, if that makes any sense. It just, I don't know, something about this just really like hit my inner child for some reason. I honestly might like bump this up to like a 4.5, because I do think about this a lot and I really enjoyed this. But at the time I gave it 4 stars, so we'll see. Maybe when I edit I'll put my final rating in. But yeah, that is We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson, and highly recommend this. Then I read Dark Matter, another one on my Kindle. I got it through Libby. So we follow our main character, Jason, who has a wife and a son, and he is, I believe, a science professor. And he goes out to meet up with an old college buddy one night, and he does not return home. He actually wakes up the next morning, and he is in a place where everyone knows who he is, but he has no idea who anyone else is. And the story kind of just like unravels from there. It is a, like, I think on the cover it describes as like a sci-fi thriller love story like combination. I think that perfectly like encapsulates what it is. I gave this one a 4.5. My only issue with it was part of the ending. It was like really unsatisfactory for me, so that's what kept it from getting 5 stars. But other than that, I really loved it, and I think it's really unique and unlike anything that I think I have ever read before, or at least read in a long time. That is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. After that, we got into my favorite book, and also the last book that I read in February, and that is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Faeries. I'm so glad that I finally read this one. I know people have been talking about it since I believe it came out around this time last year, maybe even earlier than that. But yes, this is also just another gorgeous little, apparently I'll have a type, speckled edges and mushrooms on the cover, and I'm sold. This follows, if you haven't somehow heard what this series is about, it follows our main character, of course, Emily Wilde, who is a researcher of fairies at a university. Oh my god, I'm talking too fast. Catch my breath. Water break. And she is trying to make this Encyclopedia of Fairies, of course, and her last bit of research that she needs to do is she's going to sort of like fictionalized Iceland, is what I'm assuming that it is, to this very remote village, study these fairies called Hidden Ones that have never previously been studied before. And so she gets there, she's having some trouble like relating and getting along with the villagers there. And then her sort of like research rival at the university pretty much just crashes her research trip. And obviously there's a little bit of romance that ensues between the two. It is very slow burn. The whole story is, I would say, like a slower paced one. Although I like got through it really quick, and I found it to move at a nice pace. I just thought this was perfect and so whimsical and magical and fun, and it just made me smile so much. And yeah, my favorite book I have read so far this year. And that is the end of today's video. I'd love it if you guys could let me know down below your favorite books that you have read this year. If you've had any 5 stars, I would love to know what they are, and maybe I could add them to my TBR if I haven't read them already, or we can chat about them down below. And yeah, I guess until next time, happy reading!